This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results. Are you ready to feel the power?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. And as we do, sometimes we bring you some people with a different perspective on life that is not insurance-centric, and that's what we're going to do today. Our guest is Mr. Bob Marsh, who's a keynote speaker on the topic of all things, if you can imagine it, in our world, simplicity. We are in one of the most complicated industries out there, but this guy tells me if you can keep it simple, you can be successful. And I actually believe him. So we're going to find out more about that. Before we get kicked off into that thought process, though, Bob, why don't you give everybody just sort of an overview of who you are and how you got to this point in your life today?
Yeah, you bet. Well, first of all, David, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Love what you guys are doing and happy to kind of help wherever I can here. Looking forward to the conversation. So my background is all in sales and sales leadership. I've spent the last 25 years doing that, from, retail sales to copier sales to digital marketing and leadership. I also founded and grew my own company, raised several million in venture capital. So I've seen kind of sales from many different angles. So really how I got into this is how I got into the world of professional speaking anyway, is when I started my own company, I use it as a way to get our brand out there and found it really successful. Felt I was adding a lot of value, getting good feedback. So I decided to, hey, take it a little bit more seriously and kind of put some more time to, put some ideas into some shape and bring it out there to the world in a whole new way.
Nice, man. So the copiers, that's something we got in common. I sold office supplies.
Let go of that one.
What's that?
You can't let go of that one.
No. And it's, I mean, I feel like if you can do that, you can sell just about anything, man. That's not an easy thing to do. I don't know if you've listened at all to this, but it's been well documented that I used to sell office supplies, and obviously along with that goes copiers, but it was like, it got to the point where I could walk in and just look at somebody's, whatever printers they had behind them. And I knew it's taking this toner and it's got this much, page yield on it. And they're going to need, however many to get them through based on how many cases of paper I saw on the, so it was just it was an interesting time. Definitely learned a lot from it, a lot about the sales game. But if you can sell somebody copiers, I feel like you can do just about anything.
Yeah, it is quite a market, and really, you think about it, like, it's highly competitive.
Yeah,
for a lot of people, it's not the most exciting thing to purchase. They'd rather just kind of keep what they've already got.
Yeah,
and
why do I need a new copier?
Yeah, who needs a new copier? Like,
Yeah.
On the other side of it, you have like massive improvements in technology that are regularly happening, and cost of things kind of, in some part of it, particularly technology related to ink and that kind of thing. And it's been so many years since I've done this, but like, we all know
that's true. Yeah,
that it's plummeting. So like, there can be good rational reasons, so, going back, well, it's funny, like, little story. So the very first, it was my very first corporate job, selling copiers.
Mm-hmm.
And literally the first call I ever went on was at Grand Haven High Schools in West Michigan. I walked in and the client gave me one look up and down. He just started laughing at me. And
That's the best.
And he laughed at me. He's like, because I was too young. I was green, too green, he said. And I had to leave the meeting and look up, what does that mean when someone says you're too green? He told me that he hated the company I worked for, and that my predecessor, the prior sales rep, was a crook. And he put them in a fraudulent contract, and that every customer in my territory felt the exact same way.
That's awesome.
That was my first call. And it was amazing actually, because it's not uncommon, not that, everyone is that mean, but everyone actually felt that way. But he was very, very clear about it. It just happened to be my first call, and I look back on that, and I actually learned a lot from that experience, because I got it right between the eyes, on the importance of really understanding the mind of the buyer and being able to adapt to it and to be an expert, because they don't want to hear from some kid. Like, they wanted to know, like, how can you help me?
Right.
What was crazy, and this it kind of leads into this whole topic of complexity, is, go 6 weeks back prior to that first sales call, I spent 6 weeks like studying material and living in classrooms and learning about finance options and manufacturing, and like, if the customer says this, do that, and how to overcome an objection, how to get to the decision maker, all this stuff that, not that it's not valuable, but it's like, oh my God, like, could we make it more complicated? But that's not what the customer wants. What they want is like far more simple. So anyway, It was a great experience. I learned a ton from it, and it kind of helped ever since. And it sounds like it did to you too.
No, yeah, for sure. It was, it was like a master's class on sales. I was walking into 40 plus businesses a day cold. Maybe I had been there like a week or two ago, but I hadn't seen the decision maker or whatever the situation was. But it was just like high volume, just, rinse and repeat all day long. And then once you started making the sales, well, then you started like immediately training other people. So it was definitely very beneficial. Surprised that I stuck it out for as long as I did that for like five plus years.
That's pretty good. I did it for about 2.
Yeah.
And so I love your point, because like you had to like literally knock on the door, walk in, someone didn't want to see you.
No.
And so but I learned too that, there was value in just, the numbers game, especially back then.
Oh yeah.
The internet, all that kind of stuff, for like, so you could just do a little more numbers game than I think you can do now. But like, I realized like, I got to walk in there with something of value.
Mm-hmm.
And something of value is not a brochure. Like,
yeah.
I need to do a little, so like I called on schools, so K-12, and I learned this little bit of insight that the average school, there were 40 pieces of paper that flew through that district for every student each month. So what I did is I could go look up the school, and I could see, okay, how many students do they have? And then I do the math, and I walk in and be like, so I did a little research on your school, and I discovered that if you look at all the schools nationwide, you have whatever 43,500 pieces of paper flying through your school. They're either on printers or copiers. Did you know that? And that was genuinely like, really? Where did that come from? And then we started talking about it, and the idea is, now I'm actually showing up as an expert in how to better manage your costs and all the documents in your district, not just the dude trying to sell you a color copier, which would be like the ultimate thing to So anyway, the idea of like bringing insight, I learned very quickly
through that. Yeah. Nice.
What I missed when I was on my K-Cup run.
Well, he was, yeah, right. Giving his backstory, I heard copier sales. And so we started, that's all we've been talking about is the copier sales and quill days and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, that's where we're at.
I figure copier sales is pretty cutthroat, man. It's got to be
That's
tough.
what I said. It's like, if you can do that, you can do just about anything.
Cutco. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Kyle sold one of everything. I think.
Keep.
Did you really? Did you sell Cutco knives too?
Yeah. Why don't we just keep talking about my previous job?
Okay, we got to talk. Let's have an interview with Kyle, David. This is a little more interesting.
Yeah. No, the Cutco thing, definitely did not last in that for 5 years. That started.
That's good.
No, that was when I was in college, and that was right around the time of the recession when that was hitting, 2007, 2008, whatever. And so that didn't last too long because people weren't really willing to drop $1,500 on a new set of knives. It wasn't going to pay the bills. Let's say that.
Mm-hmm.
You start with your family and friends and call them, and then start trying to web out a little bit. But it was That was an interesting experience. I knew that it wasn't for me when they had me come in for a training on Saturday when all my friends were at the USF games. That's where I went to school, USF in Tampa. And I was just like,
That's not going to work.
This is bullshit. I'm out.
Many other things you could sell.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how like that. So did you say that was when you were in college?
Yeah.
Yeah, my first I sold in college. I had two different things, but one of them was in retail, selling golf equipment, which we can talk about. But like it's amazing. Like you learn those things early. Like I don't know about it for you, but when I did that, I didn't realize till the end. I'm like, this sales thing may be up my alley.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it until you actually did it. And you got to do it like I mean, it doesn't have to be cutthroat, but when it's difficult like that, you just learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah, and quickly too.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I'm thinking to myself, of all the things that I have been involved in from a sales standpoint, outside of the time that I spent in retail, which was, it was extensive. It was a decade of my life. But outside of that time, have I ever sold something that wasn't a need?
I mean, I feel like you bring up the satellites all the time. It's not a need. I would classify that as a luxury, especially back when you were doing it.
I agree with you, except for the fact I was selling satellite dishes in West Virginia, a state where over 60% of the people did not have cable. So if they wanted to watch TV, I would tell you, I actually agree with what you're saying. In those people's minds, they needed that though. Yeah. They needed that to be able to get their TV fix. And so my point being, I don't know that I've ever had a job from a sales perspective where I had to go in. I guess a better way to say it would be I didn't need to go in and create demand for my product. I already had it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Going door to door down a holler in West Virginia that I already knew had no cable because I had done my research was shooting fish in a barrel. I just had to get the first one to fall.
That's fair.
And then I knew I was going to sell, a couple of more because everybody wants to keep up with the Joneses. Yeah. Insurance, a little bit different. It's not that I necessarily, there's this wild demand for my product. People legally have to have it in most cases. So I don't feel like that's as much of a wow factor as me being able to go in and do the satellite dishes and home theater. I think that when you go in and you do bring value and you have a robust value proposition, you can create the demand for that easier than you can the actual product that you're finding. I tell people insurance is the funding mechanism to buy my value proposition. That's how I position at the point of sale, period. You're already spending this money. You're using it to get paper that you're pushing around that gets you jobs that you're supposed to have. It'll pay out claims in the event that you have one, God forbid. But at the end of the day, insurance is very much commoditized. People don't look at us as trusted advisors unless we position ourselves that way intentionally. And so it just ends up being another thing that gets to be a line item on the income statement as an expense, and they're on the road. If you can go in and talk about the ways that you can help them gain market share, the ways you can help them reduce turnover, and you're doing that through your value proposition that's unique to your agency, it's your agency's fingerprints, you're going to create a demand for that if you're any good at all. I just think it's really difficult I don't know too many people that other than the people who have already had a claim that are jumping up and down saying, hey, I really want to buy insurance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's different businesses. And I would think that there's products in your world where you have to do it. I mean, I've had a couple of different roles where you had to do some of that. I mean, I just call it's a 2-step sale. So step number 1 is help someone realize why they should spend money on this category at all, which has nothing to do with me or my company or why I'm better than the competition or anything like that. We're just helping them understand why they need to do it. I sold for a company in the digital marketing space. And, the first thing we had to do is help them understand, why should you do digital marketing in this way? Not like anything else. Why you should move money from, print advertising to digital. Why you should move from this, that. Here's the advantages of it. Here's the benefits. How do we go sell that concept internally? But only when we first got them to understand the value of it in the first place, then it was, okay, now let me try to explain why me versus the next guy. And so, I think that if you break it, if you do realize you're in an industry or maybe an insurance, like there's people that don't, I mean, I hear about all kinds of crazy types of insurance that you can buy that probably people never even thought of. But, there's probably certain things where you say, all right, I got to first start to help someone understand why should I consider doing this with anybody? And then after you do that, well, certainly you're in a really good position to sell why you, because you're the expert that advised them on how this all works and what they should be analyzing. So that two-phase sale is way more complicated, I would say. If you do have that single, the demand is already there. Now your differentiation, there's commoditization like you're talking about. You got the price got to be right, but I'm sure you experience this, David. Like you can win to competitors just by being responsive, paying attention, what you say you're going to do. Like these basic fundamentals of like being a good human being are what separates you, as well.
Well, I say it all the time. Show up when you say you're going to show up. Do what you say you're going to do. Email and phone calls should be returned in a reasonably timely fashion. And if you don't know the answer, don't make it up. Admit you don't know it, go get it, and get back to them in a timely fashion. If you can do just those 4 things, you're already light years ahead of everybody else out there.
It's funny, I was talking to someone, I think I wrote a post about this on LinkedIn, how it basically saying, what if we change sales training from teaching you about a product or service? You gotta have the basics. But what if we spend our time teaching things like how to be a good listener, how to ask questions, how to follow up, how to be on time, how to dress, how to carry yourself, how to communicate with confidence, like all these really, really basic fundamental things to being a business professional that, I think I came up with a list of like 25 things that were purely about like etiquette and writing and clarity, that would help you no matter what your job was. Those are the things, to your point, that will separate you from the competition, particularly in an industry that is more commoditized or is not necessarily about that first step sale. That alone will separate you.
Should be a course at business school.
Oh my gosh. I could do like 8 semesters on those topics. Like,
yeah.
Well, listening alone, man.
Yeah. Right.
Listening alone.
Being like an active listener.
Yeah. It's like I say all the time, too many times people listen with the intent to respond as opposed to the intent to understand. Right? Like we're so worried about that next zinger or that next gotcha comment that we can make that we actually miss opportunity because we're not paying attention. And then we look stupid at the point of sale because somebody's going to ask you a question about something they just said. And the whole time your mind is somewhere completely different, trying to figure out how you're going to, prove your point. It's just interesting because I think so many times, whether you're in a negotiation or whether you're point of sale, Chris Voss does a really good job of describing this in Never Split the Difference. It's not adversarial. If you're in a negotiation with somebody, that person is not your opponent. They're not your adversary. You need to view them as your dance partner, and you're going to lead them where you want them to go, but you need them to move with you to the same beat, or you're never going to get the end result that you want. And I mean, that's certainly a skill and an art and something that requires practice and can be developed over time. But I would argue there aren't very many people that are just born with the innate ability to be a very, very good empathetic listener with no preconceived bias or intent to respond.
Yeah. Well, think about it. Like it takes work. I mean, if you're a good listener, and you guys have to be doing what you do. I mean, like you kind of said this, there's people who are actually listening, and there's people who are just waiting to talk. Like, and that there's kind of there's a difference, but it's hard to really listen sometimes. I mean, it takes effort. I mean, we can talk about this, but like the average human attention span is just like nosediving. So it's hard, and it takes more effort now than it did 20 years ago. And then certainly than it did 100 years ago. So we've got it. Like it takes work, and you've got to teach it and learn it and practice it and force yourself and be disciplined to just pay attention.
Yeah. So talk about this concept of simplicity, man. It just seems so complicated.
Yeah, it does. So, you think about, the world is just getting more complicated for all kinds of reasons, right? And what I see, like the very simple message is, the more complicated it is, the less we're going to sell, because customers just don't have time for it, and they're frustrated. So you think about, what's going on out there. So first, I try to figure out, like, how do I break down like what exactly is happening in the world? So one, just really simply, is information overload. I mean, just if you look at research, it'll say that the average human being today takes in 74 gigabytes of information every single day. And to kind of put more shape around that, that's the equivalent of 16 full-length movies in one day. All those emails, text, social media, videos, signs, advertisements everywhere. And so, and the research says that it's increasing at least 5% every year. We all know it is. It's getting worse. If you go back 500 years, the average human would take in 74 gigabytes in a lifetime. Now, granted, they were dead when they were 28, but like the point is, like, there's more information coming at us over the place. So what happens is our brains have learned to adapt. It's like, it's not bad that all this information is coming in, it's just that we have to adapt. And so neuroscientists study this, and our brain uses something really simple called adaptive attention. And we just kind of adapt to narrow in, like, what am I going to choose to pay attention to? So you think about, like, those long emails.
My wife would say it's never her.
Oh, no one wants to admit it. But like, think about like the long emails that you get, like 6 blocks of text and like a giant link. And like, as soon as I see that I have to scroll, it's like,
no,
okay, either
done.
Delete, or like, if I've met you, I might, it might even like you, might be like, oh, okay, I'll get to that later. And then like, maybe you'll get to it, maybe you won't. So like, okay, that's first, information overload. The second thing is just dwindling attention spans. So the research on this is really funny. 20 years ago, the average human attention span was around 14 seconds. Today, it's
got to be, I was going to say half.
Yeah. A goldfish is 9. So it's like and it's just dwindling. And we can kind of, and we all know why, right? There's just so much information coming at us. So when you think about that, our ability to hold people, if you understand these things, if you understand that someone's attention is going to zone out every 8 seconds, it doesn't mean you have to stop and ask a question every 8 seconds, but you better think about your voice inflection and how you talk and how you carry yourself, and the way that you communicate and using nonverbal communication. All these things matter, and which is why when you write something, keep it brief, because they're just going to ignore it. I see these beautifully crafted emails that I say, that's great. You've got every single point in there, or propose, whatever, every single point they could ever possibly ask. But here's the problem. They're never going to read it. All that time you spend on it is not ever going to get read. So when you that's kind of the simplicity, which we can get into more, but like, if you understand that's what's going on in the world, then you say, okay, as a fundamental reality, I got to change how I approach, how I talk, how I communicate, and how I sell to adapt.
So, yeah. And I mean, here's the thing, man, we're at a point now where we have so many tools at our fingertips that even if we suck at taking and making things simple, software will do that for us. Like, if I want to write that, maybe I'll tell you, I'm going to use a different example, but it applies the same way. If I get mad or irritated about something, underwriter sends me bad news that I don't like, my first reaction is just get down there, I'm going to get them on email. Let me type my 5-paragraph response and everything. Rather than me doing that and committing political suicide to a certain degree, or at least causing reputational harm and damage, we're at a point now where I can take that and paste it into ChatGPT and say, summarize this into a 3-sentence email that will get all the major points home, or whatever my prompt is. I can take whatever wording that I have and make it more focused. I can get it broken down into the smaller and more digestible pieces, things that are going to grab people's attention. So if people are still, marketing and sending out these long drawn out emails, and I'm going to tell you my least favorite ones here in just a second, but it's because they're not thinking outside the box and using the technology that's available to us. Because even if you're not capable of doing that, yourself, there's software that is. The new technique that I really despise more than anything, and I know that I'm probably dealing with some 14-year-old kid in Japan who's working after school to do this, and not really any kind of email, professional email group or whatever else, but it's the people who are telling me they know about my company and they know they have a solution to my problem, which, by the way, I don't have this problem when I get the email, but they know that I do because they've done their research. And they send me this email in this very friendly conversational tone. I know that within 5 minutes, I'm going to get a second email from the team lead or whoever it is, let me step in here and finish what so-and-so started. Like, that drives me absolutely nuts. Now you've got the email automations at the point where they're going to hit you with the first one that sucks. Then they're going to immediately come back and they're going to hit you from the point of, I wrote a guy last week. I'm like, nobody cares what your job is, man. You hold no more authority than the other person who emailed me about a problem my industry and my company doesn't have. You're wasting your time and mine. May God have mercy on your soul. No, I mean, I'm just kidding. But I mean, that's how I feel, man, because here's the thing. This is the one thing I can promise you will never, ever change. It will not change in the sales game. Nobody is going to change my mind. People that are willing to work harder are always going to get ahead. And here's the thing. The people who are willing to work harder are not the people that the second you connect with them on LinkedIn, send out 1 million messages on a bot that uses a token that grabs something that's not even the name you go by or anything, trying to tell you that they understand your business because they took a couple seconds to read your LinkedIn profile. The person who actually wants to connect with you took the time to read your LinkedIn profile, probably clicked a few links to read some of the content that you've put on there, maybe even went to your company website and actually did due diligence as a salesperson, and they're going to send you a quick note, or better yet, as I tell people to do, they're going to send you an audio note through the LinkedIn app so they know you're not a bot, you're a real person, and that you're authentic in what you wanted to connect with them for. That's it. I don't think people want to play games online, but yet there's so many games that can be played. I don't think the solution is you just abandon it. I think you do it the right way, and you're going to highlight that you're that much better than everybody else, which goes back to my point. If you're willing to work harder and do the things other people aren't willing to do, you're always going to write more business. That doesn't mean you don't use technology. You just work to use that technology to work for you the way you need it to instead of the easiest way out.
Amen. Amen. I mean, think about it. The fact that there's like the technology, it's just one more reason we don't have a good excuse to not do this stuff right, because this technology can help us if we use it to our advantage. But the other thing, all of this technology too, and all the different messaging tools that you're talking about, like I love your comment about like really personalizing. Like, I get these all the time. Personalization does not mean inserting my name, my title, and my company name and the name of my company with like the comma LLC at the end of it. Like that's not how people communicate. So, but you know, I see that kind of stuff and I'm like, oh, this is like makes it so easy to stand out, because like so much of it's terrible that if you just like sound genuine, because you are, and you actually do a little bit of research and have a specific idea that's relevant to them, like, you're going to stand out, because it becomes a little bit easier to. Now, because buyers are so barraged with so much, you've got to figure out a way, like, how am I going to make my message look a little bit different so they even open the thing? But, you know, suddenly your batting average goes way up.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can mix in some of the other things too, like with the technology. Like, you can reach out, you can maybe send them something, or one of the things that David talked about that I thought was brilliant was just looking in the like the Fast 50 or whatever the title of that publication is.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, seriously, the Business Journal every year they give you the book of lists. It's an easy way to prospect. Everybody is going to go in there and look at it. And everybody's going to hoard themselves out to everybody that's in there. You know what I do? I just simply send them a note with my business card that says, congrats on making the Fast 50. Looking forward to being there with you next year. That's it. Right. I don't try and sell them anything. I would love to have like a hidden camera where all these people are like, who's this guy? I don't have any idea who this guy is, but he sent me a note. Okay, great. That's all I wanted to do. Not every interaction with somebody has to be about trying to close the deal. There's too many people that end up screwing up actual opportunities because they try and close way too early, when in reality, all I want them to do is get my name in their head in one of my stainless steel business cards, which, by the way, I know they won't throw away. And then when it's time for me to reach out to them and get them into our ecosystem where we're going to, market to them in any of the number of ways we do, there's at least some level of name recognition and brand recognition there. That's it. And if I did my job right, they're going to remember me as the guy who literally just sent them a thank you note.
Mhm.
I heard a great story of a guy that ran a new business for, it was like, I can't remember what business they were in, maybe accounting. It was a big practice. And this guy was the absolute rainmaker in his industry. And it happened to be in Metro Detroit. And it just year after year after year, just massive amounts of new business compared to anyone else. And so somebody had asked him, like, I mean, what do you think is really different? What do you think you're doing that's different or unique? And it comes back to some of the stuff we talked about. And when he said, he's like, the one thing that I do that is the biggest mover is every day I call at least just one person just to check in and see how they're doing. And I'm not trying to sell them anything. I'm just calling to see how they're doing. I read something about their business, what's going on in their world. Naturally, people genuinely ask, like, well, tell me what's going on with you. And it opens up a business conversation. But he's like, the only purpose of that call is to actually call and take an interest in somebody. But the thing is, I do it every day. And most people won't. And it's literally that simple. The amount of business that comes out of it, because now I'm top of mind as a genuine human being. I go out of my way to not be selling, but of course I know that I am. And like, that's it. And that goes back to what we talked about before. The simple, fundamental, basic things, one of which is being genuine, actually caring. Like that's the kind of stuff that separates you.
So what are some big mistakes that you see from producers out there?
Yeah, we a couple one thing I'd share as an example. So, we talked about a lot of them, just kind of the basic fundamentals, like jumping quickly to trying to close a deal or something. So I want to give you two different stories. So they actually happen to both be in the world of retail. So my first job in sales, we talked about earlier, I was selling golf equipment. So as background, like I played golf competitively in high school and in college, and I wasn't like great or anything, but like I loved the game is the point. So I was selling golf equipment, and one day, one of the other salespeople in the store came up to me and she said, can you give me some advice? Like, you're like our top seller, and I need some ideas. My first thing was like, I had no idea. I had no idea. No one ever told me that. So I the other thing that surprised me about this conversation was I never felt like I was selling anybody anything. I was just helping them. Someone walks in the store. I know that is the natural human reaction to a salesperson. I heard someone say they have commission breath, like that someone walks in, like they're just repulsed. So I had to figure out a way, how do I disarm them? How's your day going? You been playing much golf lately? Like, where have you played? Where do you like, I'm not trying to sell, I'm just trying to strike a conversation. And eventually they'd realize, like, okay, this person is approachable. And then, we'd have a conversation. Tell me about your game. Like, here's some of the latest new equipment. But, the most expensive isn't the best. The least expensive isn't the worst. Let's figure out what's right for you. And it would kind of just go from there. I was just helping somebody. There's a, being a little bit more specific, there's a store, they sell running shoes. It's called Roadrunner Sports. Roadrunner Sports has sold more running shoes and walking shoes than any place in the world. They've sold 80 million pairs of shoes, 40 million pairs of shoes over the last 40 years. And what they do is they have a really unique way to kind of take this complex thing of like, there's 100 different pairs of running shoes and narrow it down to people to make it really simple, but it's incredibly persuasive. And so here's what happened. So like I walked into that store and I'm looking at this wall of like 100 pairs of shoes. I'm like, oh my God, like how in the world? I had no idea. I just buy whatever cool, whatever is the right price. So a guy says like, hey, what can I help you with? They look overwhelmed. I said, I have no idea. I can't believe how many options there are. And he said, well, let's talk about this and figure out what's right for you. And like, that was the thing. Let's figure out what's right for you. I'm not going to sell you something we're going to figure out together. So he started walking me through this process. Are you going to run inside or outside? Oh, I never thought about that. Are you going to run on a track? Are you going to run on the street? Are you going to run in the trails? It all affects like the tread of the shoe. We went outside, run to the flagpole, come on back. He watches how my foot strikes the ground. Go to the side, my foot strikes the ground. Go back inside, and he says, all right, here's the 3 shoes that are right for you. Take a look, try them on, let me know what you want to do. So what happened was he walked me through a process to help narrow these things down. And in the insurance industry, we know there's just like a ridiculous amount of options. But what he did is like he broke this down and then ultimately made the decision up to me. He relinquished control. As a buyer, I want to be in control. I'm just looking for you to help guide me to the right answer. And so, that simple little approach of like, you can't have a million options for people or 10 options for people. You don't want to have one option either. Like, let the buyer feel like they're part of the decision process, which just takes a little bit more effort, a little bit more time. But if they feel like in control, then, they're going to buy more from you.
I honestly feel like all of the salespeople out there buy their shoes from the same place, because my good friend Josh Braun actually has a story very similar to that, where he went to the wasn't planning on buying anything, went to the mall with his wife, and the guy basically took some guy who was there to kill time while his wife was shopping and walked him through the discovery process, and he walked out with a brand new pair of shoes. And I think that also lends to the fact that is salespeople, we appreciate a good sales process and somebody who's a master of their craft, man. I mean, I'm overly critical of everybody, from the person who seats us in a restaurant to the person, like everywhere I go, I'm listening to how people, and I'll even say something like,
thanks for putting us in the back booth, Dick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not necessarily that, but it's just like, there's a lot of different ways. Like, recently we went to I was in Chicago for a conference, and we went to Michael Jordan Steakhouse, which I was like, all right, we're going to Chicago. Michael Jordan, pretty big name in Chicago. I've heard pretty decent things about this place. Let's go check it out. Ended up eating there twice while we were there. It was fantastic, but both of those experiences were not equal. The first time we went, we had probably one of the best servers I've ever had in my life, bar none. Any restaurant, this guy was on his A game from the second we walked in. He was suggestively selling. He was taking time to explain preparation, and you could tell what steaks he wanted you to buy and which ones he didn't want you to buy. But I was cool with that because I was being overly analytical anyhow. But it was an awesome experience the entire time we sat there with him. And even to the point where, he heard us talking. Like, he would never interrupt conversation. If he heard us talking, he would come up, he would wait. And then when we were done, he would begin to talk. But at one point, they have the steaks are served on these big butcher blocks, and they had like 3 or 4 different kinds of meat. Ours had, it was supposed to come with a strip, a Wagyu strip, a filet mignon, and a lobster tail, and then some other stuff. And we had been talking about this prime Delmonico that looked like it was good, but we wanted to get the butcher block. And he said, I can tell you what, here's what we're going to do. I heard you guys talking. I know you want the prime Delmonico. I want you to have the prime Delmonico. Instead of you getting 2 different strips, keep the Wagyu one. That's the one that everybody wants anyhow. It's really good. Keep your filet. Let's take and substitute this prime Delmonico for the regular New York strip that was part of this. How easy was that for him to do? It was simple, right? Number one, I'm sure I paid for it. I didn't even look to see if he charged me any different, because that's the steak I wanted, and he made it happen. But just how smooth he was about going through that process. Same thing when it came time for sides. Same thing when it came time to sell dessert. We left absolutely stuffed. And every one of us said the same thing. Man, that guy was fantastic. I'd hire him in a second to come work at the agency, because he has a process that he has learned, and he is a master of his craft. Wives didn't come into town until 2 nights later to hang with us for the weekend. So they wanted to go to Michael Jordan's because the husbands posted the pictures from when we were at Michael Jordan's, and they didn't get to go. So they wanted to go. We take them there, and guess what? We didn't have the same guy. Was the steak as good? Every bit as good. The food was good. The wine was good. Nothing to complain about. The experience was completely different. And had I gone
that
there
sucks.
And had that same, it's not that the guy was bad. He wasn't.
It just
bad.
it wasn't the same. He didn't go above and beyond.
He didn't miss anything. Like, if I'm looking at X's and O's on a play, he ran the play to perfection. What he didn't do was the extra piece, though. He didn't do those little things that the other guy did. I mean, you don't know this about me more than likely, Bob, but I've written a couple of books, and one of them was titled The Extra 2 Minutes. And the entire premise of the book is if you just take 2 more minutes than everybody else to do the same task that they're doing, you're going to do it in a more memorable way that should lead to more sales conversions for you over time. And it's the difference between staying at Ritz-Carlton and staying at another Marriott brand, that's maybe a tier or 2 down. Functionally, they're both the same thing. It's a place for you to go lay your head down, sleep at night. But I don't go to the Ritz-Carlton because that's what I want. I go to the Ritz-Carlton because when I get out of my car, I'm greeted by name. When I go to check in, everything is absolutely perfect. When I go to my room, everything is already set up, typically with a welcome gift waiting for me when I get there. I like that. It makes me feel like they want me to be there and that I'm important to them. And as a result, I don't mind paying a little bit more to stay at that brand because I'm at the point in my life where I appreciate those things and I feel like I work hard enough to get those things. That's the difference. There's plenty of people out there that are, ultra successful and don't do the extra. I would just argue that if you take the time to do the extra, there's never a question about whether or not you're going to be successful.
Yeah. And you know what? You'll probably enjoy it more and you'll feel pride. And, if you have that mindset, you're going to build better, genuine connections with people. So, and then you're going to get referrals and, you're going to start talking about the steakhouse that you went to just like you did.
Mm-hmm. What's been the most rewarding thing about going out and speaking in front of people and kind of, shifting your career path into training others and helping them be better at sales?
Yeah, it's so rewarding. And I would say that there's a couple of different parts of it. Like one is over time, like as I've led different teams and I built my own company and everything, that you begin to learn in your career, like, gosh, I know more than I realize. Like, and some of the little things that I share with people, I coach people on, I realize like are very simple and seems very simple and straightforward to me, but it is not simple and straightforward to other people. And so, so then to go through the process of how do I extract a lot of these things out of my brain and put them into a way that's like easy to understand. I can communicate in a way that's memorable. I can bring in stories. Like I just really enjoy that. I love building things. And so the idea of like being able to create that, and it's a never ending thing. Like the speech that I built a year ago, I was so pumped about it. And then like fast forward a little while, I'm like, that speech sucks. And then you start building and iterating and you kind of keep going. And now I'm on the current version, which I know like 6 months from now, I'm gonna be like, I got to keep it. And so I actually love the process of iterating and fixing it and making it better and delivering the performance on stage. That is always like when you're speaking as a professional, you kind of have to have a balance between, for me, like I'm all about, let me deliver a speech that gives tangible advice, is going to help people walk out of here and they're going to be able to win more business, like no doubt about it. On the other hand, you've got to have a little bit of entertainment factor going on. And so, that part, learning to balance those two things, and it forces me to bring a little more energy out than I might normally see. That's like number one. And number two is like, to see people react and be like, that was unbelievable. And you gave me something that is going to change the way that I operate. This is going to change the trajectory of my career. It's going to change the way I was just did a speech last week. I was in Atlantic City and someone's like, what you shared with me is like, we're going to go back, get to work, and it's going to change the direction of our company. It's so rewarding. So knowing that those ideas that I try to kind of codify and bring forward are actually making an impact is highly rewarding. So it's also, like I said, I love building it. I love turning it into something. And, as you learn your craft, hey, you guys are doing it with this podcast and other things too. It can also be financially rewarding because you're figuring out a way to best leverage your skills to help other people. And, that has an advantage to it too. So it's kind of a perfect combination of multiple things.
I've said for a long time, the one thing that every single one of us is selling and has the ability to sell is our own brain. That's it. Your intellectual capital is what's going to differentiate you at the point of sale, regardless of the product. Your approach is going to be unique to you. If you have any game at all, you should be able to come up with a unique approach that's going to get people's attention and subsequently drive revenue. But most of it boils down to your brain. How are you wired? Are you wired to educate? Are you wired to solve problems? Can you articulate your solution? Can you articulate the perceived problem in a way that your buyer understands? And then can you subsequently articulate the solution to that problem so that they see the need for the solution? And ultimately, insurance is insurance, man. General liability is general liability. Yes, there are exclusions, endorsements, sublimits, and all of that stuff that every single one of us has to know about. But at the end of the day, you're never getting to the point where you place the policy if you don't close the deal and have that person gain enough trust in you to want you to be the person to do that for them. And the way you do that is through how you represent yourself, how you have a different approach, and how you sell your intellectual capital for all practical purposes at the point of sale. How I go in and sell to somebody is completely different than how a large number of my competitors do. It's not completely unique because there are other people who tend to, do some of the same things, but for all practical purposes, when I go in, it's going to be the first time that prospect has heard that conversation from anybody. And I know that I'm in the right place when they're looking at me like I'm either nuts or I'm a genius. Either way, I know that I'm having the right conversation because it's the first time. And it's crazy to think that in an industry that is as populated as the insurance industry, that's been in existence for as many years as the insurance industry has, that you can still find unique ways to open the door and have conversations. And I think that holds true with any industry at all. You just have to be willing to think differently and look at things from a different perspective than what the status quo does. Otherwise, you're just going to be one of the lemmings getting ready to head over the side of the cliff.
No doubt.
So we got about 9 minutes left before we hit the top of the hour. What have we missed that you wanted to cover, Bob?
Hey, well, I've really enjoyed the conversation. This is good stuff. One thing that I would share that some of the stuff you were just talking about, I think is so important. But there's an element that I often share with people about how much we get in our own way more than other people or our company or our products or services, whatever might be, getting in our way. And there's something. It's a section of my speech that I call noise canceling confidence. And so the idea here, they're using the analogy like noise canceling headphones. So you kind of go back like where this all starts. So a guy by the name of Dr. Amar Bose invented the noise canceling headphones. He was on a flight from the US back to Switzerland, and he got the headphones. He plugged them in like the two prongs in the thing. Like you got 8 stations. It sounds terrible. And so this motivated him to say, gosh, this experience is so bad. Like, and he started drawing and engineering out what 10 years later became the world's first commercial noise canceling headphones. So the way noise canceling headphones work is that they have a tiny little speaker in them, a speaker, and it's listening for that exterior noise. A little piece of electronics determines the sound waves, and then what it does, it creates a reverse sound wave that comes in through the speaker, and then it cancels out that exterior noise, so you can focus on what you really want to focus on. Now, I use this analogy because in our own life, we also have a lot of noise. And a lot of that noise in our head for a lot of reasons. We don't believe in ourselves. We worry what other people are going to think about us. We're scared of how the customers are going to react. Remember something that somebody we don't like said to us one time, and it makes us hesitate. And the thing is, that voice in our head is one of the biggest limiters to our success more than anything else. And so when you're in sales, I think it's important to understand this. There's a book I read recently called You Have More Influence Than You Think. It's fascinating. And the core idea in there, through countless numbers of research, which I can go into, which are kind of interesting, it is that people are twice as likely to say yes to our requests than we give ourselves credit for. So the point is, like, we get in our way more than the customers getting in our way. We just don't, we become afraid to ask or afraid to bring it up. Like, we don't bring up something that would be helpful to somebody. We don't ask for the order. We don't knock on that door. We don't, for reasons that are more about us than are about anybody else. And so I think that, that's important. It's just a natural human thing. It's not you are weak and therefore you won't be a good salesperson. It is a natural human thing. But if we want to succeed in sales, we've got to understand that and make a little bit more effort and determination to overcome it, and just kind of carry ourselves with confidence. Because the thing is, customers want that. Like, they don't want someone who's arrogant. Like, that's super annoying. Like, that's not it. But they want someone who's confident, understands what they're doing, can communicate with conviction, and can help the customer get something done. And so when I talk about this world of simplicity, a lot of things that I'm talking about are understanding simply the mind of the customer what motivates them to make decisions, and then what are the things that we can do. And one of them, it starts with confidence. And so when we carry ourselves with confidence and ignore that noise in our head, we can make the customer feel a lot more comfortable with us and much more willing to move forward. And really, you think about what our role is, we got to understand our industries, but what we're trying to do is just help people make decisions. And we can have them make those decisions faster. They're going to make more of them in our favor because of the things that we talk about: simplicity, communication, narrowing things down, confidence. That ultimately is what it's all about.
Cool.
Kyle, anything else as we wrap up?
I don't think so, man. We've been going, but had a lot of good conversation. I think we've hammered it pretty good. How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, good. Well, hey, I've enjoyed the very natural flowing conversation. I feel like I could talk to you guys all day long. So again, Bob Marsh, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with folks there. And then my website is meetbobmarsh.com. So you can learn more about my speaking practice, the different things I talk about. I also got a pretty active blog. So I'm just always kind of sharing ideas and things that I think would be helpful. So always check me out there, and always happy to always kind of keep an active on LinkedIn in particular. So
sweet.
Good deal. Well, listen, man, really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. Know how valuable your time is. And certainly I feel like conversation was good. The audience certainly should have some things to think about. At the end of the day, keeping it simple is really the hardest thing that we do. We make it hard. It's not that it's hard, it's that we make it hard. And sometimes we just need to do the one thing I talk about all the time, and that's slow down to speed up. Let's think about what's going on. How can I make this as easy as possible, as simple as possible? Not necessarily easy, simple. Simple and easy they are not synonyms. And then engineer your process from there. I think sometimes we're so worried about all of the bells and whistles and shiny objects out there that we forget about the fact that sometimes just a very succinct message is all it takes to get your point across. And that's what we could each focus on and improve on as we move into 2024. So with that being said, Bob, we'll catch you next time. I'm sure that we'll talk again at some point in the future. And if you're somebody out there at one of the insurance state associations, or you're with an aggregator and you're looking for somebody to come in from a speaking standpoint to be a keynote for you, feel free to reach out to Bob, because he does that. And I think that his voice would certainly be one that is very refreshing to our industry. With that, we'll catch you next time. See everybody later.
David, Cal, thanks a lot.